without wasting time, let's now get into that promoted chat with Professor Gabriel Abiodun Adeniyi, Head of Mass Communication, Based University, Abuja, on the near absence of Nigerian women in the unfolding political process, in addition to the unimpressive numbers of young people and minority demographics in Nigerian politics. What does the future hold? Welcome to the program. Prof, good morning. Good to have you join us.
Yeah, good morning, Steve and Abi. Please just identify me as Abiodun Adeniyi. Leave out Gabriel.
We know that you're a prof, and we like that title. All right, Prof.
Just remove the Gabriel. Abiodun Adeniyi is fine.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay, Prof.
All right.
Professor Adeniyi.
Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you. All right. Cheers.
Okay,
Cheers,
so let's get right into it. You know the subject, you know the topic. It's getting heated up. It's all politics. But politics without adequate attention about women, about minorities, about, the less privileged, if you like, and the, those that ordinarily you would think that at this time that everybody is talking about change and about progressive politics, we're not hearing so much about them. Let's start with the women folk. How will you assess what is going on across board, not just APC, not just PDP? There are 18 political parties, that are entitled, that are, ought to run for the offices in 2023. But then we do not have so many women. It is doubtful if we will get to where we are currently, about 9 to 10%, let alone talking about 35% affirmative action that ought to allow more women, in the fray. Do you think that is still a patriarchal kind of politics that we are paying, or that we don't have sufficient women seeking, political office and positions of authority via election?
All right. Thank you very much once again, Steve and Abi, for having me. Been a while, It's a pleasure to be here once again with you.
Thank you.
The question you have raised is very, very fundamental, and we also have to remember that there's no system and society that is completely homogeneous, neither is there any that is completely heterogeneous. So in every configuration, we're often dealing with heterogeneous system, and what matters essentially is the management of those differences, and of course, beyond the gender difference, beyond the difference between male and female, we also have other kinds of differences across class, across income group, across ethnicity, across religion, etc., etc. But that is the character of systems, that is the character of society. But what defines a society really is how well the level at which, these classifiers, these divisions, are integrated into the body politics, the level at which there's representation, the level at which belongingness, is managed, that people are given, level at which people are given a good sense of belonging. That's what defines, whether or not a society is civilized or nearing civilization, whether or not a society is sociologically sensitive or insensitive. And of course, our system, in our own system too, we've been bothered over the years on integrating sections that are ordinarily vulnerable, women, children, youth, etc., etc., But in the political sphere, of course, we have seen that maybe consciously or unconsciously, some kind of underrepresentation of the women, as the case could be. And I want to agree with the language, the word you used, that we still, that maybe it's about patriarchalism. And I do believe essentially it's actually that we are still essentially patriarchal. There are so many reasons that we can adduce for this. We can say it's religious, we can say it's cultural, but these reasons that we are adducing are actually deep-seated, that it will take time for us to evolve out of them. But how do we evolve out of it? One is through painstaking effort on the part of leadership, beyond affirmative action, beyond declarations of international multilateral organization. It's a concerted effort on the part of the leadership, to integrate women, represent them fairly, and project them, not just in mouthing, in the things that we say, but in our actions and activities, give them a rightful sense of belonging, especially in a situation where quite a number of them, are becoming achievers. Some of them they are becoming exemplars. They are accomplished in their feats, and we have so many of them to point to. So it's about time that we are consistent in formulating and implementing policies that seek to integrate women, not just in the political sphere, but in other spheres. And in the political sphere that we're talking about, we celebrated in history, in our political history, the time where we had a Franca Fegwa, for instance, emerging as the first female senator, and eventually we had Senator Itagiwa, we had Khairat Abdulrazak Gwadabe, and of course, in recent republic, we had so many of them. But like you rightly observe as well, it is declining. Why is this declining? It just goes to show that our tendency for favoring or privileging the man is still with us, and we are yet to get over it. It is subtle, but in being subtle, it is also very, very effective. And the other solution really is, again, is around sensitization, campaign towards behavior change, deploring behavior change communication, and this can be done on the short and the long-term basis. In the short term, is to have some kind of policy initiative to integrate them ahead of the next election. But in the long time, is to have a sustainable communication strategy, towards sensitizing the populace on the need for greater integration and involvement of women, considering that democracy is about inclusion. And of course, if an important section like our women are continuously excluded, it takes something away, from our democratic experiment, as the case could be. Steve and Abby.
All right, Prof. Adeniyi, you've spoken about sensitization. Let's do some sort of comparative analysis with some Western democratic dispensations today. How would you say these governments are supporting the drive for female political participation in relation to Nigeria? Could our structures also be a key deterrent?
Well, we have oftentimes said, Abby, that the bane of our society is actually the weaknesses of our institutions. That our institutions are not strong enough, and if we have to grow as a system, we have to strengthen our institutions. And when we're talking about institutions, we're not just talking about public institutions; we're also talking about private institutions. And in this circumstance, we're talking about political parties as institutions. How strong are they? Are they systems, or are they outfits are they outfits that are characterized by the rule of man as against the rule of rules and regulations? But in most cases, it's rather the rule of man, unfortunately. The systems, the political parties have come out in recent times to give some kind of preferences for women. Asking, maybe waiving fees or reducing fees and encouraging a whole lot of them. Those things are very encouraging, no doubt, and we have had some of them responding. But there's a larger subtext. There's a larger problem. Resting in places. And this is one of prejudice. This is one of on some it's some kind of discrimination that that are rather covert. Not overt, that you see around, that serves as impediments and preventing otherwise qualified women, otherwise vibrant and robust women from coming out to indicate interest. Most of the time is one of resignation, thinking that even if I come out, there'll be so many kinds of assumptions around me. I'm coming out because I'm probably ready, to make some compromises here and there, So it's also one of perception. Those perceptions can be very limiting. So the institutions have a lot of work to do, in rebuilding notions, and ideations around, that important gender in the configuration of our system. And of course, we can't run away from the fact that we're still a struggling, developing society, but we need to realize that development is just not only in the physical alone, it's also in the intangible, in things that we say are non-physical, which are the character of our system. And if our character is still largely discriminatory, largely about perception, about notions, about stigmatizing a gender, then it becomes much more problematic. And of course, we have to note it as an item that has to be resolved, if we want to qualify as a growing nation. Steve and Abi.
All right, Prof. Let's just stay with the gender issue and the question of the underrepresentation of women in, political offices in Nigeria, particularly towards the 2023 election. It looks to me like the only good news so far seems to be coming from Adamawa State, where for the first time a female candidate has emerged on the platform of a major political party, the APC. Senator Aishatu Abinani, who defeated a former governor, defeated, leading candidate to emerge as the candidate of the APC. This is, without a doubt, some good news coming from that place. It reminds us, of course, of Mama Taraba, of old, God bless her soul.
That's right.
Looking at quality women who didn't show any form of hesitation, of fear, to want to go for political office. Do you think that if she eventually emerges as the governor of Adamawa State, that will have assuaged the feelings of many Nigerians who think that women are not doing sufficiently well, in the scheme of things? And if you put that in sync with what the First Lady, the wife of the President, is saying, Mrs. Buhari, about the fact that the key political parties should at least try to use women as running mates where men have emerged. It doesn't look like we're seeing anything close to that yet, except, of course, for the name of Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, that has been mentioned as a possible running mate to Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. We don't know how far that will go, given the fact that we are not even sure if she's a member of PDP or if she's still a member of PDP after serving the government of former President Obasanjo and his successor. Do you think that if a woman emerges as governor in Nigeria, only one out of 36 states, that will be sufficient? Or do we need to ask for more? And what are the things that need to be done to ensure that it is not a male-dominated scenario?
All right. Thank you, Steve. I think 1 over 36, or if we have 1 out of 36, it obviously tells us that we still have some more work to do. But if she emerges eventually, she's probably not going to be the first, if my history serves me right. I think we had a flash of it sometimes in Anambra some years ago, although very briefly, but at least that record remains.
You're right. You're right, Prof.
But yeah, that's okay.
Yes.
Okay, very well, thank you.
Yes.
So I think the conversation is continuing. With her emergence, her emergence actually shows a sign of courage, some level of determination, considering the state that she comes from. And of course, there are some states in this country that you will regard as conservative, but of course, we've also seen flashes of exemplification of these agitation, through those states, which is quite commendable. It just shows that we are succeeding at some level. But we do not want a situation where we will succeed today, then tomorrow we'll record some failure. The day after we'll succeed, then we'll record failure the day that will come afterwards, So we want some level of consistency and growth, because in the period of Jonathan, we had a higher level of representation. Then, of course, we had it plummeting again, and now we are hoping that it will increase, So beyond the advocacy, by the First Lady, that aspirants should use women as their running mates, and beyond the female gender also coming out to contest, it's also the need, maybe for the next set of leaders, to be concerned about increasing the number of women that they appoint into positions, Of course, we have so many of them very competent. There's no gainsaying that fact. And of course, in the international sphere, some of our best ambassadors as citizens are women, and I have in mind Dr. Okonjo-Iweala that you mentioned. I also have in mind Amina Mohammed, and quite a number of them have excelled in the past. Obiezi Kwesile is there. She did well at the World Bank, or is it World Bank or United Nations now? And of course, quite a number of them, I will have them as writers. Chimamanda Adichie is a potential Nobel Prize winner, by the grace of God. So many of them are out there. These are good reasons, why we should continue to encourage them, trusting in their ability to be perfect, to be excellent in their field of endeavors, But it is important that, the emphasis should be in the political sphere, giving the power of politics to shape other spheres, to shape the economic, the business, the foreign, the international spheres, etc., etc. So it is good news. What we heard from Adamawa is good news. But beyond that one is also the need for us to be consistent, so that we can record growth, and overall in the interest of sustainable development. Steve and Abi.
Just a quick addendum to that, Prof. Will you outrightly advocate for a female presidential running mate for the leading political parties? How feasible is that, for 2023?
Steve, you want to put me in trouble?
Speak out, Prof.
Okay. Well, I think it's not going to be bad, because there's nothing any potential male running mate can do that the averagely successful Nigerian woman cannot do, Ms. Dr. Okonjo-Iweala is a good match to any one of them. Anywhere she can hold her own standard ground in any circumstance whatsoever. Amina Mohammed can as well do it. Even before the emergence of before the presidential candidates started emerging, there were pointers, there were suggestions in many circles. That is, any of these two women should be invited to run, because of their success, because of the success they've recorded in their fields, and because of the international recognition that they have enjoyed over the years, that these recognitions can also be, an opportunity for us to harness their social capital for the benefit of our country. So, by and large, I don't think there's anything stopping any of the candidates from considering them, if there's going to be a major boost, to the campaign to encourage womanhood.
All right, Prof, you answered that quite diplomatically, I must say. But let's talk about some of the existing cultural nuances that we have here. While we have seen some interest in female political participation, many would also argue that there is also a very high degree of apathy too, or the outlook that politics is just a man's game, really. The youth, on the other hand, regardless of gender, are very ready to take a shot at politics. So how do we assess this disparity in political enthusiasm?
Yes, Abby, maybe we should also acknowledge that there are actually some natural or sometimes biological and also socially constructed impediments to women growth, women participation in not just political, economic, and social processes, as the case could be. And these impediments, we have said they are religious, and in being religious, they can be very strong, And of course, look at the story of creation, for instance. Who did God create first? You can, from there, you can draw inference, letting you know that somebody has been pictured as the first, and being the first, that person is somewhat superior, rightly or wrongly. And of course, if you come to the society, they will tell you that the headship of the man is incontestable. So it has taken time over the years for us to deconstruct this narrative. And deconstructing it is not a day's job. It comes through education and through the ability of women themselves to prove their mettle, like they have done in so many instances, to continue to prove their mettle, so we'll not be referring to just 1, 2, 3, or 4 of them. By the time we have a lot more of them, of course, it will be a taken for granted affair, for them to be effectively integrated. So beyond just the campaign, the advocacy for it, it's also the need for us to recognize the place of history, the place of religion, the place of our culture, and the place of social and family learnings, where the man is portrayed as the head, irrespective of the achievement of the woman. But we have to also realize that we are in the 21st century, where we are witnessing increased exposure, increased sophistication of the learning processes, and of course, they are growing to prove their mettle, becoming stars and superstars, sometimes even leading to combustions in marriages. Yes, these things will continue. There are things that we probably cannot avoid, but what do we do? It comes back to what I said earlier about management of these differences, appreciating the fact that including sections, integrating section is a continuous work, not something that is knee-jerk, episodic, or one-off. It has to be sustainable, Abi.
All right, Professor Adeniyi, 2 questions from me. First is to revisit the 6 bills. 3 of them passed, 3 of them, thrown out by the National Assembly, gender-related bills. The promise after days and weeks, of protests, by women organizations was that those 3 bills thrown out will be revisited. But then we have not had anything. Politics has taken over. Do you think that there are chances that those bills that were thrown out will ever be revisited in this National Assembly, or we will have to wait for next year, when the 10th Assembly will be reconstituted, constituted? And then let's move to the question of the physically challenged people and their inclusiveness in the Nigerian politics. By virtue of Section 84(8) of the Electoral Act, the primaries that are ongoing now allows for 1 physically challenged delegate per state to be included in the number of delegates. Do you see this as a welcome development and a development that can spur participation, by physically challenged people? And do you think that Nigerian society, Nigerian nation, is ready for active participation, not just as delegates, but active participation of people with physical challenges?
All right, Steve, to your first element, for the first element of your loaded question, I would say there's every reason to be optimistic that the National Assembly can still revisit the women-related bill. Do not forget that the whole entire process, democracy, is about continuous consultation, engagement, negotiation, and action. It's a long process, and sometimes it's about patience and tolerance and understanding, removing our mindset, not thinking that anything is absolute or anything is concluded yet. The door is still open. There have been bills in the National Assembly that stayed there for 20 years. So another one stayed for like 10 years and all of that. It's not to say that this is right, but just to say that all hope is not lost. And of course, the Dr. Ahmed Lawan-led National Assembly, has been positive so far, in the passage of bills. They've been quick. They have the record of passing many bills, irrespective of what some critics think. In my opinion, I think that the door is still open. There's still high hopes and possibility that it could still be revisited. But we need not forget that where we're also expressing our optimism that they can still revisit it, that we did not forget that engagement, consultation, advocacy, are needed tonics to galvanize leaders towards action. So these tonics, should continue to be taken or administered, so that we can achieve our ultimate goal as members of the civil society. And to your second question on the disabled, I think we still have a lot of work to do in integrating the disabled. In some other societies, you cannot construct a public facility without accommodating the disabled. You have to make provision for where they will use their instruments, their equipment, their wheelchair, etc., etc. You have to accommodate them appropriately before that kind of building is approved. And of course, they are giving concession in places, in parking, in hospitals, in public places. The concession is given to them, and sometimes they are also giving remuneration. They are hardly even allowed to work. They are compensated because of what they are suffering. And most of the time, this thing is not as a result of, it's not out of their wish, it just happened. And of course, we know life happens. Life can happen to anybody. One of the greatest writers that came out of Africa, Chinua Achebe, became disabled, at the twilight of his career. So at any point in time, anything can happen to anyone. It's just in the hands of God. But the responsibility, the onus is largely on the society that they belong, to be caring, to be concerned about them. We have a lot of work to do in this area. It is okay that the political parties, are concerned about this, that they are making some efforts. But the argument again is that a lot more work has to be done, not just at the level of political party as a national institution, as the case could be, but at the level of the governments, that has the greater ability and the resources, to ensure that this section of social classification is better catered for, so as to mitigate the pains that they are suffering. I think this is important, Steve. Thank you.
All right, well said, Professor Adeniyi. We want to thank you, as always, for joining us, sharing your views and insights with us. We want to wish you a good morning.